Okay, in this video, let's go through the basic process of recycling and elimination of red blood cells. Okay, so let's do this. So, red blood cells recycling and elimination. So let's kind of go through an abbreviated life cycle of a red blood cell. So we're going to be starting at, I'm going to start off at the bone marrow since that's where the blood is going to be produced. So let's do bone marrow. Okay, so let me put red bone marrow. Okay, you don't want it yellow. And let's kind of follow this through. Now how I recommend you learn this is don't just take a passive role, sit and listen to this, or you have the notes, and this chart is, I believe, within your notes as well. Don't just follow along. I recommend getting a blank sheet of paper and actually draw this out as well yourself. And do it a couple times. You'll retain this information a little bit better. So red blood cells are produced in your red bone marrow, okay? And red blood cells live for about 120 days. So that gives you a red blood cell, and it has a lifespan of 120 days, thereabouts. Okay. Now, again, remember that the red blood cell doesn't have a nucleus. It doesn't have any cellular organelles, so it doesn't deal with the repair phase. And the red blood cell is squeezed through some very tight areas a lot of times, and it does take some wear and tear. So the lifespan is approximately 120 days. After about 120 days, those red blood cells are eliminated or destroyed, and they are destroyed by macrophages in the liver or spleen. Okay, so macrophages in the liver or spleen find those damaged red blood cells, and they begin the process of destroying it. Now, those macrophages, when they break it down, will break it down into three primary components. So let me do this here. Let me do this here. And let me just draw that a little bit better. Those lines are pretty bad. Okay, so here we're going to break it down into three components. We can have globin is one component. The other component is going to be the iron. Okay, and the third component is going to be heme. So this is what it's breaking it down to on those, okay? So let's just take these very basically to start. Globin, that's going to be the easiest one to do, is then broken down into amino acids. And they're going to be reutilized, some of which end up back in the red bone marrow to make more red blood cells. Other amino acids will be used for something else, okay? Iron, on the other hand, can take a couple different areas. Iron, and I'm going to skip a couple steps on some of these because when they are transferred from one place to another, they are either on a carrier molecule or they're converted to another component. I'm not so concerned about that at this point. What I do want you to know is the process of where it goes. So iron can be taken to the liver or spleen, okay? And it is primarily going to be stored, and it's primarily stored in the liver in this case. And when you need more iron to make more red blood cells, that comes up and it also transfers back to your bone marrow to make more red blood cells. So iron is sent to the liver or spleen and stored there. Primary storage site is the liver. And when you need iron to make more hemoglobin, then it's transferred out of the liver and then carried to the bone marrow from that point on. The other area that it can do. Iron can be eliminated, and you can lose a small amount in sweat. You can lose in urine, feces, and menstrual cycle. So anytime you're going to be losing blood, you're going to be eliminating or have a loss of iron as well. So those are your first two components. Those are pretty simple to deal with. Heme gets a little bit more complex, not a lot, but it's not too bad. Heme is broken down. Well, heme is the molecule minus the iron, okay? So heme is converted to biliverdin, which ends up as bilirubin. Let me do that again. It goes to bilirubin. Boy. Goes to bilirubin. Bilirubin then gets carried to the liver. Okay. Then bilirubin becomes part of bile. So let me go this way. I'm just doing that because I'm kind of starting to run out of space. So it goes to bile. Okay. Bile then goes to the small intestine. All right, I've got to bring this back up a little bit. Okay, so bile goes to the small intestine. And again, there's a couple conversion issues on this one. Here, then it can go to the large intestine. And out into the feces. Okay, so that is one path that the iron, the heme can take. The bile, small intestine, it's also converted to urobilinogen. So urobilinogen is at this phase. So it becomes well, it doesn't go that direction. It kind of goes this direction. Urobilinogen is then can do a couple different things. Urobilinogen can then go to the large intestine and out to the feces. The other way is this goes back into your bloodstream. My computer rebooted itself, so these things need to be recalibrated. And so from the bloodstream, it goes to the kidney. And from kidney, it's out into the urine. Okay, so that's your basic pathway on this. So let's kind of go through these again. So we have your red bone marrow produces the red blood cells. Your red blood cells last for about 120 days. When they are destroyed, they're destroyed by macrophages in the liver or spleen, and they're broken down into the three component parts: globin, iron, and heme. Globin is then further broken down, converted into amino acids, and then reutilized, some of those amino acids back up into the bone marrow for additional red blood cells. Iron is then transferred to primarily the liver, but spleen does it as well. And it primarily is stored in the liver until you need more iron for more red blood cell production. So then that would be transferred back. The other pathway for iron is you're going to lose some a little bit in the sweat, urine, feces, and menstrual cycle. Heme is the last component. That's the heme molecule minus the iron. That's converted into bilirubin. I think biliverdin is first, then it goes to bilirubin, goes to the liver, and the liver then converts it to bile. That bile is stored in the gallbladder. That's going to be the digestive system, so don't worry about that so much right now. Bile is then released into the small intestine where it's converted to urobilinogen. Kind of screwed up that a little bit on this image. Gets converted to urobilinogen. Urobilinogen can go a couple different directions. It stays within the intestinal tract, gets converted one more time in the large intestine, and excreted or expelled in the feces. The other direction, urobilinogen can be reabsorbed into your bloodstream, gets carried to the kidneys, and then excreted in the urine. Phew. That's a nice little, really quick way at looking at this. There is also an image in the textbook on this that covers this as well on it. But draw this out a couple times. Get used to it. You're going to need to know this pathway as well. So that's it for this one. I think the next one we're going to talk about here looks like we're going to do different types of white blood cells. So we're going to compare and contrast white blood cells. So stay tuned.